Well, that was one hell of a Dynamite, wasn't it? Welcome back to JT Channel, and welcome to the very first JT's Wrestling Review for AEW Dynamite. I got front, back, and front. I wrote down so much, and it was one hell of a show. I'm so excited. One last final, definite, not going to say it again, apology for Monday Night Raw's review. It was late, it was lazy, it was terrible, my life is crazy, it happens. But we're going to jump right into it here. The first thing we saw was the Elite, the Bucks and Okada showing up in their big fancy SUV. And then they looked fantastic like they always do. And then another SUV pulled up with Jack Perry. Crowd popped for Jack Perry, which was really cool. I enjoyed that a lot. And then security was like, you can't come in. And the Bucks were like, yes, he can. He's with us. So, woo! We'll get to that later. Trust me, this is a developing story throughout the night. It was like beginning, middle, and end. It was awesome. Then Orange Cassidy's music hit. We came out to the arena. We were in Jacksonville. And his music was playing, waiting for him to come out. He comes falling out of the entranceway. Trent's kicking his ass. He throws him in the ring, beats him up a little bit. And then he's like, Chuck, come out here. And he had the shirt on that said Trent, Orange Cassidy, and Chuck win the big one. But he had like blacked out Orange Cassidy's name. It just said Trent and Chuck. So he was clearly wanting Chuck to come out. Sorry. He said that they brought in Orange Cassidy to kind of be their mascot because he was just a silly guy, but then he feels like it went the other way around. And Trent's like, let's give the people what they want. And he goes to hug him. Chuck has the microphone. He says, you know something, Trent? I always thought you were a piece of shit. Beats up Trent for a minute. Then he challenged him to a parking lot fight because while he won't be cleared for an in-ring match, a fight is different. So that's how they're going with it. And I believe that's going on Rampage this coming Saturday. Because of the playoffs and stuff, they had to move Rampage to right after Collision, which I might check out. Parking lot brawls and parking lot fights, in AEW are always fun. So that was a good opening. You had the Bucks and Okada, Jack Perry right into this Trent and Chuck thing, and they're gonna have a parking lot fight. We'll have Trent versus OC somewhere down the line, maybe on Dynamite, or maybe on pay-per-view. Mox was up next. He cut a promo. It's a Mox promo. Said all the things he was going to say. He hyped up Powerhouse Hobbs a lot. My daughter is crazy. Which was good. Because Hobbs is... We all know how good Hobbs is, but you always want your champion to, big up their opponent. When I trained to be a wrestler, I know I just kind of blow past that. But when I was training to be a wrestler, I was always told, when you cut a promo on your opponent, the base should always be, you're good, but I'm better. Acknowledge how good your opponent is, but then point out that you're going to kick their ass. So that was a good promo. Then we had Swerve come out, and I thought he was going to come out to do a promo, but I noticed he was in ring gear. I wrote pop here because he got the ovation he got even in Jacksonville was huge. But he was wrestling. He took on Kyle Fletcher. The opening was my favorite part because back to me training as a wrestler, I'm not trying to talk about it too much, but I was reminded about it a bunch during the show. Chain wrestling was important. We would do like 3-minute chain, and it's not the easiest thing in the world to do if you don't know what you're doing. But these two chain wrestled for what felt like ages, and it was beautiful. It was flawless, seamless, whatever word lists you want to use. But there was this awesome boot to Fletcher's face while they were on the outside. I think Swerve was on the apron. He booted Kyle Fletcher right in the mouth. That's how Pat McAfee says it. I know, different show. This put us in picture. I had to write that down because I have ADHD, which if you watch my videos and you don't think I have ADHD, watch them again. Yeah, that's my tattoo. It's hard when the bigger part of the screen is commercials. I have a hard time focusing on the wrestling. So I missed some of that. I did see this awesome spot. I think this happened after the break. Kyle Fletcher hit this awesome looking super kick into a Michinoku driver. I didn't buy it. Never thought Fletcher was going to win. But shortly after that, they did a picture-in-picture within the show where you saw the Bucks, Okada, and Jack Perry going into Tony Khan's office, which, again, will continue throughout the night, so I'll talk more about it. There was a move on the apron that I missed because I was busy writing my notes and I haven't gone back to look at. But right after that, Swerve did the Swerve Stomp on the apron. You had a house call. He went for the house call, but Fletcher caught his leg. Throughout the match, he was selling his leg. I think especially after that stomp on the apron. Put him in like an ankle lock. Grapevine it and all that, but he didn't get it. There was a cool spot where it was a flatliner and a brainbuster into a 2 count. I think Fletcher did that. Again, never thought he was going to win. There was a back and forth fight over the Tombstone Piledriver, which is hilarious. That used to be like the move. The Undertaker was like my favorite wrestler of all time. So I was like, Tombstone ends a match. Not anymore, it doesn't. But they went back and forth. Kyle Fletcher eventually hits the Tombstone. Then Kyle is like, he's doing really good. Excuse me. And Don Callis tried to get him to grab a weapon or a table or something. But in the end, again, ADHD. I just got off of work. In the end, it cost him. He decided not to do what Callis told him. And Swerve was able to hit the house call and get the win, which I think is interesting when he wins with the house call. Usually it's the house call, then the Swerve stomp. But this time it was just the house call. Which, again, great match, great finish. And then, if it wasn't like 7:30 at night when my daughter starts getting tired and my wife was winding down, I would have shrieked because they announced that Kenny Omega is returning next week in his hometown in Canada, which is like Manitoba, I think. Kenny Omega might be my favorite wrestler of all time. I freaking love Kenny Omega. I don't know what else to say. I love Kenny Omega. I know he was going through diverticulitis and going over all these other injuries, so he's been going through a ton. It's going to be awesome to see him back. Awesome for that Canada crowd. And after what happens throughout the night with the Elite and Jack Perry, I cannot wait to see what this is going to do with the story. Then we have this Thunder Rosa interview, which I couldn't hear much of, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But Deonna Purrazzo interrupts it. They start shouting at each other. They get into a brawl, and they got separated. They're going to have a match, I think, on Rampage as well. So there's that. We get a recap of Will Ospreay and Bryan Danielson, which I did not witness live, but I've been seeing clips of it and stuff. And I don't have much else to say other than, like, there's no way. How? I can't wait to be able to sit down and watch that match all the way through. Then we had a match between Stardom's Mina Shirakawa and Anna Jay. Apparently this spun off from a few weeks ago. Mina showed up and helped Mariah May. They used to be partners and a little bit more than partners, apparently, in Stardom. I wrote here Mina and Mariah info dump. The AEW is always very good. Excuse me, I don't know what's going on with my voice there. They're always very good at explaining who these people are. Not that WWE or any other company isn't, but AEW was they kind of pioneered being like, hey, this is who this is why they're here, etc. So that was good. I wrote down that Mina was really good in the ring and she's very fun. I apologize if anyone watching this is like a full-time, all-time Stardom viewer and is going to scream at me in the comments. It wasn't until 2018 that I started watching all the outside of WWE wrestling. So I don't watch Stardom all that much, but I appreciate learning about these new wrestlers. People scream, I don't know who that is. Google them or just watch them in the damn ring and see if you like them. It's not hard. Sorry, that's a different rant for a different day. Anna was able to maintain control throughout the picture-in-picture break. Mina did this really cool move where she was on the top rope and had Anna's arm and then just fell down and smashed her face with her knee into the mat. It was like a short arm knee drop from the top rope. It was awesome. I loved it. Then there was a brief figure 4 by Mina. And while that didn't win, she hit this really cool roll-up. It was just this complicated surprise roll-up that she calls the Glamorous Collection. That's what I wrote. And she won, which was cool. Good for Mina. Afterwards, Anna Jay attacked everybody. They were saved by Toni Storm because of the Mariah May thing. But in a spot that really surprised me, and I was happy to see, Serena Deeb showed up after this. But all she did was she sat down at the ramp where Toni had dropped her title so she could go save Mariah May. And she cut a promo into the camera. And basically said she's coming for the women's title. She said the next time she holds that belt, it will be hers. So that's our next feud, which I'm fine with. I would put the belt on Serena Deeb because I love Serena Deeb, but at the same time, do you want to take the belt off Storm yet? So we had the Willow Nightingale TBS title celebration. I don't know what this is, but they had Caprice Coleman from, I believe, Ring of Honor on commentary, and while Willow Nightingale was coming out, he was rapping to the beat of Willow's entrance. I guess that's a thing he does. I didn't know about it, but it was cool. I love Caprice Coleman. But right around this part, I mentioned earlier that I couldn't hear an interview with Thunder Rosa, and we'd get to it later. I wrote here, horrible arena, sorry. Now, story time. No, I'm not Thomas Sanders. Back in 2021, I won a trip to Jacksonville for an AEW show for Homecoming that year, I think is what it was called. And when you're in the arena, it's really cool. It's open, and it's got a unique setting. So, and I got to see lots of cool shit. I got to see Jushin, no, not Jushin, that Juventud Guerrera Jericho match happened there. I got to watch Malachi Black hit that, whatever he calls it, that spin out, that blackout kick, and knock Cody Rhodes off of an apron through a table, or off of the top rope through the announce table. So it was a really good show, but ever since I've been away from that for the last 3 years, every time they go to Jacksonville, the sound is just terrible. People will start their promos, and for 15 seconds, which doesn't seem like a long time, but for a good 10 to 15 seconds, you can't hear anything. You just hear, and then you hear like the rest of the promo, which I guess that's the important part, is like the second half of the promo, but it's really hard to hear the backstage interviews. It's really hard. It was hard to hear Serena Deeb. It was hard to hear Stokely and Chris when they started talking. But we'll move on to that. Out came the CEO, obviously, at some point, Mercedes Moné. I don't have much else to say. Willow Nightingale's a major babyface, so she said a lot of stuff. A lot of babyface fire. CEO came out. Stokely Hathaway was talking smack and was just hilarious. But they started hyping up their match at Double or Nothing, which could main event as far as I'm concerned, but we'll get to that later on. Mercedes ended up slapping her. I think Chris Statlander went to check on her, and she almost attacked Chris Statlander. It was a whole mess, but Mercedes Moné will likely be a heel in no time if she's not TBS champion at Double or Nothing. And I'm looking forward to all of this. Like, it's all going to be great. Alex Marvez, this was great. Every person that walked out of the locker, out of the Tony Khan's office, like, it was Jack Perry, Okada, Matthew, and Nicholas. He asked all four of them the exact same question: is Jack Perry reinstated? Is Jack Perry reinstated? But then he said, no, well, we don't know yet. So Tony Khan and Jack Perry are going to meet later on face-to-face in the ring. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I guess we'll see what happens there. And so now, bear with me. I know some people, like my muse, my main inspiration, Simon Miller, likes to do. They like, when there's battle royals or gauntlet matches like this, they'll tell you who was all in it first. That's not how I wrote things down, because this was a casino gauntlet match to determine the number one contender for the international title. How it worked was two people started, and then at intervals that were fairly random, anybody could join. Which begs the question: why didn't someone come out immediately, hit someone with a chair a bunch of times, and just win? But that is another question for another day, because that's what I would have done. I mean, like, the first two out were Jay White and Dante Martin. Since it's a gauntlet match, there's not really any rules, so why don't you just, like, low blow, chair shot, roll up, 1, 2, 3, everyone else loses. Different argument. But, so, yeah, Jay and Dante started. I wrote here sudden death because I needed to let myself know what the rules were. Excuse me, because it was sudden death. Very first person out of all these people. Really fun start. Jay and Dante, what do you expect? But after Dante went down, Jay White took him down on the outside. Penta showed up. Penta El Zero Miedo, one of my more favorite wrestlers out there. He hits a couple of sling blades. He keeps control for a little while, and then Kyle O'Reilly comes out. Now, I was wondering if maybe Kyle O'Reilly was going to win, get a rematch with Roderick Strong, because obviously that match was probably really good too. But he just started kicking people in the face and the chest. That's what Kyle O'Reilly does. Then we find out, they announced during this that next week we're going to figure out who Swerve's very first challenger is for Double or Nothing. So that's good. We're going to, we're just moving stories along. AEW has more pay-per-views now, so they can't do, when they had the 4 pay-per-view schedule, they could have like 3 months where they could like do stuff on TV or whatever before they built to the big feud. Now they have to have the big feud right away. So that's good. Then I just wrote Ospreay on here because Will Ospreay came out next. So now it was Jay White, Dante Martin, Penta, Kyle O'Reilly, and Will Ospreay. He hit this awesome spot where he did this like springboard backflip double kicks to 2 people. It was awesome. Will Ospreay, one of the greatest in the entire world. Maybe the greatest in the world. He beat Bryan Danielson. Argue about that amongst yourselves. Then we got this cool moment, Ospreay and Jay White. They have history. Seeing them together in AEW. I think there was a holy shit chant just for that. Then Lance Archer comes out, whoops everybody. Choke slam in the world, double choke slam, single choke slams, boots, tosses, chucks. Eventually he does that reverse version of the Razor's Edge where he had Will Ospreay facing down up like this, and he just chucked him out of the ring into everybody, which zoomed into the picture-in-picture. But he did get out tables during picture-in-picture. I think he started to get out one before the commercial, or right around the commercial, and then he got out another. We come back, then Commander, with a K, shows up, and Taz said it was hard to believe that the smallest guy took out the biggest guy shortly after this because Commander comes in, goes for Hurricane Rana on Lance Archer. Lance tries to reverse. Doesn't work. He does it anyway, and Lance Archer goes off the apron through the 2 tables he set up, which I thought was cool. You had this awesome spot with Commander and Will Ospreay. I need that match. I need the one-on-one match between Commander and Will Ospreay. I feel like it would be in fast forward. Like, people would be watching this going, why'd you hit the fast forward button? You're like, I'm not. Then Jay Lethal comes out, which I thought was really cool. Jay Lethal was the final person. So, recap, it's Jay White, Dante Martin, Penta El Zero Miedo, Kyle O'Reilly, Will Ospreay, Lance Archer, Commander, Jay Lethal. So it was 8 people. But it could have been, I think they said there were 21 wrestlers that could have been in this match, and it was 8. Could you imagine if they got all 21 out there? Good Lord. They had this, O'Reilly and Will Ospreay did this awesome back and forth. I skipped over a note here. Jay Lethal and Penta both went for springboards, and like they met in the middle of the ring, and Jay Lethal caught him with the cutter, lethal combination, maybe that's what that is. There was this awesome finish. Will Ospreay was going for the Tiger Driver, but he decided against it after what happened last time when he did to Bryan Danielson. Kyle O'Reilly went for him, put him in a ankle lock, I think, or an armbar. Might have been an armbar. And then Commander walked the top rope and did a shooting star press to Kyle O'Reilly. He went for the pin. Will Ospreay came in with a hidden blade. 1, 2, 3. So Will Ospreay won, and I know that I tried to talk about what the finish there, but you have to see it. It happens really fast. It's the boom, boom, bam, we're done. Then the Undisputed Kingdom comes out for obvious reasons, because Roderick Strong. So we're getting Roderick Strong and Will Ospreay. Now, people are debating whether this is good or bad, because some people want him to win the world's title, but others are like, you don't want to put a title on him so soon. I disagree. I think, if you want my opinion, Will Ospreay should be the AEW World's Champion at All In. He should win that title at All In, and he shouldn't be losing right now. So, sure, let him win the international title from Roderick Strong, and then let him win the World's title at All In. Him and Swerve, unification match. Him and Swerve, I don't know if it'll outdo him and Danielson, but him and Swerve would also be really hard to top for match of the year. I had to go inside and do things after this, so I missed part of Jericho's promo, and anything that happened before Jericho's promo, I apologize. But he did this promo where he called himself the Learning Tree, and he's using the Vortex of Jericho, or the Jericho Vortex, which is an online, it's an online, like, troll thing. People are saying the Jericho Vortex, because young guys get with Jericho, and they don't come out the other side any better. They actually come out worse. I don't really have a dog in this fight. It's Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho could go onto live television and punch a puppy, and I'd go, you know what? This is probably just a character change. It's Chris Jericho. But I understand where people are coming from. He's getting tiring. He has a new theme. I don't know if it's by Fozzy or not, but I think he has a new theme now that he's the Learning Tree. It was really weird, though, because Big Bill interrupted him, and I kind of thought Big Bill was going to Big Bill kick his ass. But instead, he said he needs Chris Jericho. He wants to work under the Learning Tree. He calls him the Socrates of pro wrestling. I don't know where this is going, and a lot of people didn't like it. Maybe it's going towards Jericho forming a new faction, because you had the Inner Circle, and then you had the Jericho Appreciation Society. So he's like groups before, so maybe this will be another heel group. He'll turn heel. Now that he's the FTW champion and all that. So I don't know where this is going. Big Bill said he'll prove himself. He said keep an eye on me, so I don't know. We'll see what happens in the next few weeks. We did a interview with Will Ospreay with the Don Callis family, which was just Don Callis, Kyle Fletcher, and Will Ospreay. Callis was screaming at him about, why didn't you do the Tiger Driver? And Will Ospreay's like, I'm not going to do the Tiger Driver. And then Kyle Fletcher tried to step in. Don Callis told him to shut up. You don't know anything about winning because what happened earlier. He walked off. It's clear the Don Callis family's starting to kind of fall apart. We'll see what happens. Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay are in a team together as well. I'll be honest, I don't remember what it was called, but it was those two and Mark Davis, I think. So maybe we're going to reform them and the Don Callis family is going to implode. But with Omega coming back next week, I have no clue what's happening. Around this time, I wrote that my daughter went to bed, just so you all know. If there's I had to play with the volume a bunch if there's talking, but I don't think I missed anything. But it was time for Will Hobbs and Jon Moxley for the New Japan World's title, which is when I realized that the Jack Perry Tony Khan stuff was going to close the show. So I was like, oh, something's going to happen. Excuse me. I don't know what that reaction was, but that's what I thought in my head. Obviously, I wrote a lot of stuff down here, but in reality, this match went exactly like you thought it would. Jon Moxley had a really hard time keeping Will Hobbs down. It was a New Japan Championship match, the NJPW World Championship. So there were 20 counts on the outside, so they fought into the crowd. And Will Hobbs looked really good, but Mox wasn't going to lose. Plus, there's some New Japan fans out there that are pretty pissed that Will Hobbs just got a New Japan title shot. Mox isn't going to lose the title anytime soon. He's probably going to defend it a bunch. That's what Jon Moxley does. But in the end, he actually won by choking Will Hobbs out. I think it was with just a sleeper hold, but this isn't how you do a sleeper hold. This is CM Punk. Or X-Force, maybe. But he choked him out. He said something in the camera I didn't hear. It's like something is a dead man. Maybe he said anybody who comes for this title is a dead man, whatever. But I missed that part. But when he got down, Takeshita was staring him down with his shirt off, making almost a Shinsuke Nakamura pose. It was really weird. But Mox and Shibata, or not Shibata, Shibata's next. Apologies, getting my notes mixed up. Mox and Takeshita faced off, so that'll be a good match down the line, That'll be really fun. But then we did a Shibata interview. See? Segue. It wasn't even a segue. But basically, Chris Jericho had talked shit about him earlier in the night, and he was like, you want to talk about... Well, he had his phone where he does the Japanese to English translation thing that he does, where he, types in Japanese and it talks out. Basically, short version, he challenged Chris Jericho to an FTW title match under FTW rules next week on Dynamite. So, that ought to be interesting. A lot of people are going to scream that a bunch of elderly men are going to be hitting each other with weapons. Shut up. You're sitting at home typing on your computer, okay? They're at least doing something. But that should be fun. But we get to our main event segment. Out comes Jack Perry. Tony Schiavone introduces him, and he doesn't look like he's happy. They started a Cry Me a River chant, but it was the Oh, Cry Me a River, and they did that for a while. He started talking. He asked Tony Khan to come out, or he talked about Tony Khan. Either way, Tony Khan arrives. They have this talk about how it happened when AEW started and what it was about. And he says, will you please reinstate me? He sticks his hand out. They shake hands. They hug. Everything seems fine. Everything wasn't fine. Honestly, if you haven't watched Dynamite yet and you're watching this whole review, go watch what happened at the end of the show before I spoil it for you, because this was crazy. Jack Perry punched Tony Khan in the chest, in the rib area, somewhere around there. Tony Khan fell to the ground and took a few seconds to sell, but oh well, get over it. He's not a wrestler. He has said on multiple occasions he won't be on screen unless it's necessary for the story or anything. So this was his first time doing anything like this in 5 years. So, rant over. The Elite obviously run out there. They're yelling at Jack Perry, like, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? The Bucks each have one of Tony Khan's arms. They kind of look like they're thinking about the EVP trigger. But instead, Okada's like, no, what are you doing? They help him up, and Okada goes, And they hit him with what used to be called the Meltzer Driver. If you don't know what the Meltzer Driver is, one of the Jackson has him in a tombstone position. The other one does a 450, and they spike him. So they did a spike tombstone pile driver with a 450 to Tony Khan. A couple referees and security come out. They're screaming at him. They're like, what's wrong with you? What have you done? Tony Khan is dead. Apparently, he sold this into Rampage or into Collision or something. He like sold this forever, and he left with a neck brace. Eventually, the Elite and Jack Perry leave. They're saying thank you for coming. This is our AEW. You know, it's clear what's happening here, but the best part was when the last Jackson brother, I don't remember which one it was, I think it might have been Nicholas, went to leave. He was like, "Oh, thanks for coming to Jacksonville. Hope you all had a great time." Like they're so good at this role. I wrote Finn at the end of this because it was cinema to me, but all the roster runs out because they were clearly too scared to challenge the EVPs. They all run out, and then you see his dad Shad Khan standing over him. So this has gotten really interesting, really quickly. It's very much let it play out, which was a dangerous phrase 5-6 years ago, but nowadays, especially with AEW, if AEW knows that a storyline isn't working, they'll usually pivot. So we'll see what happens. A lot of people think it was hilarious because people really want Tony Khan to be dead. Like there are people out there that send him death threats just because he started a wrestling company that isn't WWE. People like me, just generic middle of the line wrestling fans that just like wrestling, I was pretty shocked by it. I was trying to take notes and I was like, what's happening? But it was cool. It looked good. Like I said, Tony Khan's selling it for laying in the ring for ages while there's like other stuff going on. That was cool. And it's definitely wait and see, because with Omega coming back next week, with the Elite taking out Tony Khan, they're like going to take over the company now. And you wonder to like what extent are they going to take over the company? Are they going to like, you know, they're going to choose, or not they, but we're going to learn about Swerve's new opponent, his first opponent next week. Is the Elite going to be like, oh, it's Jack Perry. You don't have to like it. It's Jack Perry. Oh, and we're allowed at ringside, but no one else is. Like, they can do that stuff. They can pull stuff like what we did with the Bloodline. Now, I'm not comparing them. Stop screaming at me. But they can do stuff like that. They can be like, not only is it Jack Perry, it's in a steel cage, and no one is allowed at ringside, but that doesn't count for us. We're not wrestlers. We're EVPs. So, I'm not saying take the title off of Swerve Strickland in a month. That'd be fucking stupid. There's your first major F-bomb of this video. But this is really intriguing. What will Tony Khan do? What will Shad Khan do? What the hell is next? So, overall, just like Raw, it was kind of weird, but it was a fun episode of Dynamite. Great cliffhanger ending. Really good for Will Ospreay to be shot the international title. I'm looking forward to next week. Jericho might get booed in his home in Canada against Shibata. FTW rules. That'll be interesting to see what they do there. And obviously Omega's going to be back. So all this is going to get real interesting over time. So thank you everyone so much for joining me. Hope you enjoyed AEW Dynamite. I will, of course, see you for the next wrestling review on Saturday for SmackDown. Until then, this is JT Channel. I am JT, and we will see you next time.